All right, today we're jumping into something really interesting. It's a pretty unique philosophy on life, health, and even parenting, and it all comes from this one powerful text. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the whole thing really boils down to this one central idea, and it's a big one. It's that children's hearts are, by their very nature, pure. They're born with this innate ability to tell right from wrong. And so the text argues the most important job we have is to protect that purity. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at this core philosophy of the heart. Then we'll see how that applies to kids and also to adults. After that, we'll get into some really practical parenting advice. And we'll finish up with 3 foundational rights for children that, well, you might find them pretty surprising. All right, first up, this philosophy of the heart. This is really the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about. Now, when this text talks about the heart, it's not just talking about the organ pumping blood. Think of it more like the spiritual and emotional core of a person, kind of like a command center. The source actually points to a well-known hadith that says, if it is sound, the entire body is sound. And that's really the key here. The idea that your inner health, your spiritual, your emotional health is what truly determines your overall well-being. Okay, so if the heart is that important, how does this all apply to children? Let's dig into this idea of protecting that pure heart they're supposedly born with. And this is where things get really specific. The source lays out what it sees as things that harm a child's heart versus things that protect it. On the harm side, you've got things you might expect, like hitting or insults, but also things like marital problems and even formula milk. And on the protect side, it's pretty clear. Things like intense happiness, good, natural food, and praying for them. And this leads to a pretty bold claim from the source. The text suggests that if you do all this, if you protect a child's heart and give them the right kind of nutrition, you can actually raise a child who never gets sick. That's the stated goal. It's a huge claim, right? It's definitely the most ambitious part of this whole philosophy. But here's the twist. This philosophy isn't just about the kids. It actually argues that it all starts with the adults. The text says that to be a good parent, you first have to work on yourself. You have to cultivate your own heart. So the source basically gives adults an inner checklist. On the avoid list, you have things like anger, malice, envy, that kind of stuff. And on the embrace list, you have things like wishing good for other people, humility, and just plain good manners. The logic is simple, really. You can't teach what you don't practice. You can't give what you don't have. This quote really sums up that idea of humility perfectly. No one is better than me, and I am not better than anyone. It's about finding that middle ground, right? Not feeling inferior, but also not feeling superior. The text presents this kind of balanced inner state as being absolutely essential if you want to raise a balanced child. And then the text takes this whole idea to its most extreme logical conclusion. It poses this really provocative question. If everyone actually did this, if everyone cultivated a pure heart, would we even need doctors? It specifically suggests that famous specialists like the heart surgeon Dr. Magdi Yacoub might not even be necessary in such a healthy society. It's a wild thought experiment for sure, and it really challenges how we think about health. Okay, so we've talked about the internal stuff, the philosophy for both kids and adults. So how does this all translate into actual practical parenting? Let's take a look. The guide to behavior here is super clear. It's a 3-step process. Step 1, when it comes to negative stuff, the first move is to just ignore it. If you absolutely have to correct it, do it gently and only once. No mocking, no yelling. Step 2 is all about the positives. When you see good behavior, you praise it, you encourage it, and you do it multiple times to help it become a habit. And step 3 is the big one. Remember, you're the model. Your kids are watching everything you do. And there's one more thing that the source brings up again and again, woven through all this advice. It's this: pray for them. The text constantly repeats that prayer is one of the most powerful things a parent can do. All right, we're at our final section, and this is where we get into 3 foundational rights for every child. And I'll say, these are very specific and maybe a little unconventional. Okay, right number 1 is the right to breastfeeding. But the source has a really unique instruction here. It actually says that the husband has a duty to help his wife start breastfeeding by suckling himself first to help the milk flow. It's framed as a crucial part of his role. Right number 2 is about respectful affection. And the specific advice is this: don't kiss a child on the mouth. The logic given is pretty straightforward. If it's not something you would do when they're an adult, then you shouldn't do it when they're a child. The idea is to set a boundary of respect that lasts a lifetime. And that brings us to the third right, which continues that same theme of physical respect. The text says, a child should sit on an adult's thigh, but not between their legs. Again, the goal here is all about teaching and demanding respect for the child's body and their personal space, right from the very beginning. So after going through this whole philosophy, from the idea of the heart to the checklist for adults to these really specific rights for children, we're left with one big final question that the text wants us to think about. To what extent is the health of an entire society linked to the health of our individual hearts? It's about connecting that really personal internal work to the health of everyone around us. A pretty powerful thought to end on.